Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Angular Air. I'm your host, Justin Schwarzenberger, and I am pretty geeked up about today's episode. Today, we are going to be talking and checking out NBA League Pass as a Dockerized Angular SSR, PWA, and HMR. A lot of acronyms there, a lot of cool stuff. Can't wait to check it out. So let's say hi to our panelists, and then we'll get in and meet our guest. And by the way, I'm rocking the Sacramento Kings. I got to bust out my throwback jersey. Double nickel, Jay Will. So big NBA fan, big basketball fan. So had to bring it out for the show. So here we go. Let's say hi to our panelists. Joining us today, we got Austin McDaniel. Austin, what's going on?
How's it going, everyone? Pumped to be here too.
We got Mike Brocky with us. Mike, what's going on?
I can't unmute myself. So I don't know how well that's going to vote for the episode, but if I can't unmute myself, I might not have a lot to contribute here today. But I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
All right, that's good. I was waiting for that. All right, our guest today joining us is Brian Martin. Brian, how's it going?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks a lot for coming on. We're really stoked that you're going to be here and sharing us some knowledge and some stuff going down here. So looking forward to it. Brian, you want to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself so they can know what you're up to?
Sure. I'm currently an applications architect for MBA.com here at Turner. We do everything from APIs and services that power our 25 connected devices and apps, everything from Xbox One to iOS. Then we also do everything for the websites, both desktop and mobile.
Nice.
Thanks.
All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be checking out.
So today there's an app that we've been working on, and no promises on any of this actually getting out there in the wild. It's more of a prototype at this point, but we're going to be checking out an app that does a lot of the goals and features that we've been looking for to take everything from a server-side Node.js library and move it from that to web, and then also move that to native clients. That's one big goal that we've had. Another big goal is just performance in SEO. So SSR works quite a bit for that. And a few other things that we've been going into, but I guess we can go ahead and start up the presentation that I've got here, and we'll go ahead and get into it.
Sounds good.
Live coding now?
Live coding. 30, all 45, 55 minutes left. So it's going to be awesome. No mistakes. I promise. All right. So I'm going to get everything shared there. All right. All right. They gave me these fancy slides. Everybody see my screen okay?
Yep.
Did anyone tell them that the letters are cut off there?
Yes. I believe they have gotten that feedback, but they have not changed it. And it is a little strange. I think it's like supposed to be designery and cool, but I don't get it. But yeah, NBA League Pass, Docker, SSR, and a bunch more. So again, no promises for this. We're still kind of prototyping and trying to figure out our technical direction for everything that we're doing. The prototype is kind of being created to help us find that direction. There's a few things that we've really enjoyed, and I think I have a pick for that we'll share later. But for right now, I'm going to go over just a few of the things that we've thrown into this kitchen sink of an app.
Real quick question.
Sure.
So you mentioned prototype, and I've found that different places consider different levels of prototyping. Is this something that is prototype of, hey, you know what, if with a few more tweaks and a little bit more cleanup, it could go live? Or is this a prototype in, hey, this will be thrown away and it's just like a proof of concept?
I think it's slowly transforming into something that will become a lot more concrete and could eventually be used in a real world, in the wild application on NBA.com. So I think it's more of the former. But
either way, we appreciate you sharing.
Absolutely, thank you. But yeah, I think a lot of this was with the old app. We had been on Angular since RC1, right? And we were kind of in a no ng module monolith type world. And we didn't quite have all of these techs that we've been wanting to use available to us. So we're kind of looking at it as a greenfield type project, and just seeing what works and what doesn't. Some of these have definitely worked better than others, but yeah, we'll go through some of it. So what is NBA League Pass? And this is not actually a shameless plug, although it kind of feels like it. Essentially, you can stream games with it. So let's say you wanted to watch live, archive, NBA TV, VOD, things like that. All of that is streamed across all of our connected devices and apps. There's different packages available. You can do League Pass Premium with no commercials, Team Pass for each one of your teams, single game, which I think we're one of the first leagues to provide single game, and we also do quarterly pricing. So as the game goes on, to buy that single game, it gets cheaper. And I think may have also been some of the first people to do quarterly pricing, and then we just released 10-minute pass, so you can buy 10 minutes of League Pass all at one time. So Turner and the NBA both work together to provide these digital and linear platforms. So I'm on the digital side, but we also do broadcasting. So if you're watching, some basketball games, you're probably going to see those on TNT, True TV, things like that. So that's the linear side, but I'm more strictly based on the apps, connected devices, and web, with the joint venture that we call NBA Digital. But yeah, we pay the NBA a certain amount of money to run the site and apps and connected devices, and in return we run ads, marketing campaigns, and things like that make up the money that we spend. It's kind of like a licensing agreement. I don't know all the details of that. I'm more on the technical side, but that's my very high level gist of it. So what are we doing now? So we are using Drupal on the back end. We use Drupal and Angular in a progressively decoupled way currently. So each block that you see on NBA.com, for example, the left rail on the homepage with the scoreboard, that's a block in Drupal, but Angular goes and bootstraps to that block and loads all of the scoring and other content that's needed in order to display the scoreboard. There's also some geo-targeting and things like that that go into the scoreboard. And we use Drupal to progressively decouple the sites with Angular. So Drupal provides the content and the structure, but Angular provides a lot of the dynamic rendering and personalization. The last thing that we're doing right now I wanted to touch on is AWS. So getting everything Dockerized in a container, but then also creating CloudFormation templates. So you have infrastructure as code, and getting everything into ECS and ECR, spinning up EC2 instances. We're even maybe looking at serverless, but getting all of that spun up and integrated is also a part of the Angular equation. So some opportunities that we currently see in what we're doing now, and why, I guess, this app that we're creating solves some of our problems. Making testing a priority is something that we really want to do. We currently have about 70% coverage in Angular through Jasmine and Karma, but we wanted something that was a greenfield project and forced that coverage to be at a much higher level, but also to have that coverage be even better and more specific and make sure that the unit tests really stress test the system, which is something that I don't feel like we have now. Unified and targeted API. Currently, we have a lot of services and APIs on the back end. We're kind of looking at GraphQL. Well, not kind of looking. We are looking at GraphQL to help unify and provide targeted payloads for all of our APIs. Performance. This is really the biggest issue that we have with the front end of NBA.com right now. The site was, to give you a little bit of background, created in a hurry. So each year I try to get the league to push back All-Star, and for some reason they won't give us more time on it. Unfortunately, we have very hard, and that was a joke, we have very hard deadlines for everything, and we're very driven by that. Because of that, when the site was first created, performance wasn't, again, one of these kind of priorities. And now that we have maybe not a lot of time, but a little bit more bandwidth, we're really looking to tackle those performance issues. And maybe, no promises, take Drupal out of the rendering pipeline for the front end of the site.
I have a quick question on that.
Sure.
So then Drupal is providing some of that UI aspects, and that's then just driven and just displayed in the Angular app. Is that correct?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So the structure of Angular, or the structure, is provided by Drupal. Think of it as like a piece of Swiss cheese with holes in it, and then the holes get filled by Angular. I think that's a terrible example, but I'm going to stick with it.
Cool.
But yeah, what's that?
I was just saying cool, yeah.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, Drupal is doing a lot of the rendering now, especially for articles, and not as much for videos. Those are actually very close to a single page application. But yeah, Drupal is doing a lot of that rendering. That takes a lot of time, but also we've just thrown so much stuff on the front end. We have ads, crux, analytics. I think we have 3 or 4 different analytics libraries. Our teams here at Turner and the teams for the league and NBA in New Jersey, they both have different wants and needs, and trying to unify things with maybe like segments or an M particle has been something that we've been focusing on. But really speeding up the server response time and allowing Angular to render faster with smaller payloads is something that we've really been looking to do. Cross-platform code reusability. So this is an idea that our VP has had and has kind of challenged me with, and it's how do we write a service in Node that's running, let's say, in a Lambda function, and reuse that exact same code on, web and, both desktop and mobile. And then how do we then again reuse that exact same code in native apps? And it's a problem that we've been trying to solve for a little while now, either through Browserify and Angular and native scripts, but it's one of the big opportunities and cost savings that we're looking to get out of whatever architecture we create. So again, some of our goals: easy to use, hot module reloading, local HTTPS, performance testing locally, and also making sure that everything is 12-factor, so environment variables and everything isn't dependent or tightly coupled to anything else. For our application goals, we've been really looking at a single-page app, but we've also had some talks more recently about what micro apps could look like. I don't think we're completely sold on the idea of micro apps yet, but I think they are very interesting to us. Server-side rendering, of course, gives huge benefits from SEO and time to first byte, and we're really looking to redo the entire front end that Drupal is currently doing, hopefully, maybe, possibly, with an Angular SSR. The more I've been working with PWAs, that's probably the biggest just reliability and performance that I've seen. It's been really amazing to see how well the app responds once it gets converted over to a PWA. Of course, that has to do with the speed, security, and stability. For stability, of course, we're looking at things like artillery, which is local load testing of the code. We'll do a fast load test, not of the architecture, but of the application code itself on each build. And of course, native scripts, code splitting in Angular, and additional monitoring through things like New Relic and Conviva, which is for video and other analytics reporting. So some additional architecture goals. I mentioned CloudFormation earlier, but that's infrastructure as code. So right now, you could actually go into our AWS account and delete everything, just all backups, all everything. And with our infrastructure as code, we would be able to get spun back up fairly quickly. All of that infrastructure is just a link away or an upload away. We're currently in AWS with Code Pipeline. We're using that instead of Jenkins or a few other things. I'm currently using everything in Docker with ECS and ECR, but I did see that there was some pretty cool plugins for serverless. So I'm really interested to kind of see how that goes. I think we were really looking at, well, we have auto scaling with Docker containers in EC2, but even the EC2 hosts take a little while to spin up and scale horizontally, and we have to configure all the rules for compute and memory for when to scale up, and it just seems like a lot of that headache goes away with serverless, and we've really been trying to get as many of our services into that serverless architecture with Lambdas as possible. I think you guys all know what serverless is, but for people that are listening, serverless is kind of like, and I actually am worried to say this, it's kind of like on-demand containers. It's not actually containers. They go into frozen states and a hot state, and then eventually get deleted, but they serve one request at a time. They do not have implicit state, which is not to say that they don't have states. So if they're in a frozen state, they will actually reuse the state from the previous connection, but you have no guarantee that they will have state. So there's a few little gotchas with serverless, but I think it's something that we're definitely interested in looking more at.
One of the big challenges, I'll add there on serverless, one of the big challenges there is like, how do you build web apps with stateless like backends, right? You're like, oh, our app is like completely stateless, but then when you start thinking about like, what if I have WebSockets that are updating my app and things like that, that's where it gets a little hairy. And the vendors are starting to realize this, and there's things like AWS has AWS Amplify, which actually does like a serverless function type thing with a GraphQL backend, and it has WebSockets. And then of course, like Google Cloud has Firebase functions, which kind of have that type thing as well. So it's not to say that their serverless is always not stateful. There are new offerings that can do these type of things, but they are very.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I had no idea about a lot of those offerings, and yeah, I think that's great feedback. That's one of the big problems with serverless. It is great for some things, but as soon as you really start wanting, a cache in memory that's reliable and always there, which is definitely necessary in a lot of applications, it starts getting a little bit hairier, right? It's definitely something that maybe we look at other cloud providers for provisioning of things like that. We also use quick links in a lot of our code. And quick links are great because I can click on a link in my YAML that matches a template up to some data in S3 buckets, and it automatically will provision a new environment. Being able to kind of re-provision all of your infrastructure that way is really interesting. And of course, we want to be on HTTPS, which implicitly means you need to be on HTTP 2. And someone in a meeting the other day actually mentioned HTTP 3. And I thought I was up to date on this stuff, but I guess 3 is the new hotness, and Google's serving like over 50% of their traffic from HTTP 3 already. But something more to look into there. All right, now for the fun stuff. Live coding? No. So I've got a demo. Half of the time this works all the time. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. But we'll come back to this page. So this is our demo. It's not all there yet. What we've been doing is trying to lay really, really good framework for writing and developing code as best as we can, as best as we know. I think you guys are leaps and bounds ahead of me, but especially with the NX workspaces and a lot of other stuff. But so what we've been doing is this is currently our leak pass endpoint with the leak pass player. I killed the video in it just in case there could be copyright issues for right now. So, but just imagine like a gorgeous 4K 60 frames per second video playing in there, and we'll go for that. One thing that we've been doing is, of course, code splitting. So as you go and pull in new routes, pull in just the code that you need. Say with membership as well. Another thing that was a little bit tricky for me was getting 404s and 301s and things like that to work correctly. So we did some work on that, and now you get true 404s with this app as you go through things. The other piece to look at was the 301 or 302. Still needs some sprucing up, but you do get true 302s and stuff like that with the server-side rendering of this app. Of course, yeah, go ahead.
About how you accomplish that, or how that fits into play with the Angular app?
Sure. Let me go ahead and pull up the code.
If it's not, I mean, if you have it planned, I don't want to jump you ahead.
Oh, no. This is all good stuff. Yeah, let me open up that project. And this is a little bit of sacrilege. VS Code, right? Like that's the cool thing. I use PHP Storm because we're still using Drupal. I know, boo, but it's.
I can get behind that because that's WebStorm right at the heart of it. So
sure.
Yeah, it's a powerful editor.
Yeah, but we'll wait for this app folder to open and take a look at some of the 402s or 302s that I've been working with. Also getting like native script and all this other stuff integrated was a beast.
And can you, if you get a chance, zoom or enhance that a little bit, or zoom in, or I forget.
Yeah.
PHP Storm.
Yeah. Let me get into the app module, browser module, enhance. Okay. Make that bigger. Is that looking better?
Yeah, thank you.
So there's that. We want to take a look at the app component.ts. So this is where we're doing some universal logic. I believe it's actually in the lib, and we're still getting used to kind of this NX workspace type of idea. But services, I think I put it in the server service. Yeah. So I'm not 100% happy with this code, but so we're saying if we're on the server, I'm subscribing to the router events. For right now, I'm just saying if the event URL is not equal to the URL after redirects, then 302. I think what would also happen here is maybe you would generate a config from Drupal where we control kind of 301s and 302s, shoot that out at a endpoint, and then ingest that and say, for these URLs, do a redirect of 302. I think this generally works, though, for anything that you put in the router to say, be a redirect, right? So I have that go home redirect, and it just says redirect to home, path match full. So
yeah, so kind of just mentally thinking about that, like that's done in universal because it's got to be done server side, right? For the server to deliver that 302 response to your browser. So you got this code in Angular that's, typically we're writing to run on the client side, but handling the universal scenario so that the server side can report back a 302 to the browser. Is that correct?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's. I show this to people, and it's a little bit of a, mind blown type moment. Because you're writing Angular, right? Angular runs in the browser, but then we do have these kind of options to run stuff only in the server. And it's kind of cool. Another way to kind of get around this, I've noticed I've been writing a lot of like this.universal is server. And I think another interesting way to do it is maybe you could actually inject just a service that runs only on the server in your server-based app module. So this is our server app module, but I guess I could do something like, providers, live coding.
You got this.
You guys tricked me into this. This was not planned. I blame all of you.
That's fair.
So use class. So I know I have something called a storage class currently. So that uses storage service. So that uses local storage, right? But then you could do provide, maybe just provide, Redis service, something like that. And now we can provide the Redis service. Redis service does not exist, so obviously it's going to be red, and I forget if this is use class. You guys keep me honest, but it's one of these. So yeah. But yeah, we've been kind of thinking, well, instead of having all of these if statements for the universal service, go ahead and just maybe inject other services that are just for the server side in this.
Yeah, I like that thought. I wonder if there's any way that we can eventually get to where we have that type of logic, that server side logic for Angular apps, like contained somewhere where it exists in its own little package, like you're saying, or something that as we work on that code, maybe that would help that mind map of going, okay, this is done server side, but it's in my Angular app,
Yeah, that's a great idea. Like, maybe you have those services, but then when you go over to, your data access layer or your services, you have a folder that's server and a folder that's browser. And then you just import and everything, the services that you need in those places. And then maybe that will help some with that mind mapping. Like, oh, I know this service is only ever going to be run on the server side because it's in the server folder. I'm just kind of talking off the cuff on that. That might be a terrible idea, but it seems like it could help.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the 302s, and then we also have some fun service names, but and then this is just the 404. Oh, where am I doing the 404? Let's take a look at that, actually. We're using Brotli compression. There you go. Server.ts, I'm doing some stuff there. Yeah, we'll come back to the 404 pages. I'm pretty sure you can just set a header for it, and also look at the routes to set that header on the way back. We use typically these set status and other functions to set those codes. And again, there's a lot of is server logic that I'm not super happy with as we've been doing this. And I think, like we talked about, would make a lot of sense. So of course, the routing allows us to do all of the lazy loading. I think it's, and you guys keep me honest on this, I think it's important to not do something like league pass module. Otherwise, of course, your code's always going to be pulled in. Keeping it as a string like this makes it so it will properly load it and tree shake everything.
For now.
For now? Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Any insights on that?
Yes, so dynamic imports. Looks like that's going to be the way that these are done rather than having magic strings to do a lazy import.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it should be.
Is that like doing the import statement right there, right? In that load children, setting that value?
Correct, and then that returns a promise, and yes.
Oh, cool. Cool. Yeah, I think
standard, less magic stringy.
Right. Because especially I'm using these aliases, and that just makes it like even more magic.
Yeah, it'll be nice with that import statement, right? Because then you get that nice code editor navigation when you click on that and can trace that code.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, we are getting pretty happy with this. There's a lot of pollen in Atlanta, so just a FYI. My manager is wildly allergic, so she is blowing up right now. So the not found components, I actually just did a ng-on init and then this.server.setStatus 404. And since the Angular routing just loads this component whenever it doesn't find the route, it just, whenever it gets loaded, it just sets the status to a 404. So that's kind of how I went about that. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that's just the way that kind of made sense to me.
Nice. So like in that scenario, the 404, you really didn't have to implement any server-side specific or universal specific code because universal would just do the rendering, would find the no route, and your Angular app would do that, right?
Yep. I just encapsulate all that logic in this set status function. And I think that's kind of what I've been moving towards is you can kind of call any of these functions and you don't worry about whether it's necessarily the server or the browser. You just call them and you know that the function will know how to route things. But yeah, also, of course, PWA, right? So right now, we are doing update on reload and bypass for network. So it's a little bit slower. It's not quite there, but I can go ahead and take that off and then it gets quite a bit faster. One fun thing that I think everybody likes to do is, of course, throw it in offline mode. You'll see this little MBA image go away. And of course, great. It looks like the image for the player got moved out to a CDN that we're not caching. But of course, this goes 100%. This always works about half the time. So yeah, this kind of is my canary in the coal mine to let me know that I'm in this mode. Of course, you can still load the other pages. One interesting thing that I haven't tried out is this go home. Let's just go for it and see what happens. Ooh, not happy. What happened? All right. So 100% of the time this works 50% of the time. But yeah, let's get back in there. And we'll go back to...
And then, so did you just use the Angular PWA library to add your PWA functionality to this app?
Yes. Yeah. Cool. The ng service worker and all that. So we'll go ahead and get all that in there, but you can go offline, of course, see the image, go away, and all of that. But it's kind of neat. It's kind of interesting. And it's been a lot of fun to really work with this stuff. But yeah.
And so then, do you imagine for that, like, there'll be other content on there? Because obviously, if the video, if we're not online, we can't watch the game streaming, right? So will this application still have other content that would make it valuable for people? Like, I could still use it offline, sort of thing? Is that...
Yeah, absolutely. I think so we have several large projects coming up. One of those projects currently is going to be related to our storefront. So that might be kind of the closest area that you'll see this app getting deployed. But what we have a lot of problems with is Drupal is slow, sometimes takes a long time to respond, and those errors could potentially get bubbled up to the end user. So what we've been doing is kind of creating this app as a PWA to help us recover from some of those issues. So for example, now, if I go to google.com, that won't load, but if I come back over here, /3pass, it comes back. So we've really been looking at it from a resiliency perspective, but also a performance perspective. And I think making sure that people are still able to buy, even though the Drupal backend might be down. We have a plethora of other services that you can work off of, all in kind of a microservices type architecture. And as long as those are up, in theory, as long as like the page was still loading and still responding, you'd be able to still purchase League Pass or watch a video or something like that. And again, a big part of our needs and wants was this is performance. And of course, there's not a lot going on this page, so it may not be the best example, but we do have a Lighthouse CI, which is a continuous integration NPM package that we've put into the Docker file and code build and code pipeline. And it'll actually fail the build if any of these metrics get too low. This is something that we're still tweaking because, of course, different times of day, things could take longer to respond and things like that. So at the very least, we've been using something called Calibre to report on the statistics of our site. So right now, production MBA, you can obviously see a few issues here on the performance side. And this is really what we are striving to fix. Calibre is great though. It's a command line tool through NPM. You just run it and it's fire and forget, and it'll go ahead and start a run in the dashboard for you. So again, Lighthouse CI is something that we've been working with quite a bit. The lazy loading, which you saw earlier. Another few things that we've been looking at is chaos testing. I also mentioned artillery a little bit earlier.
Before you get into that, I have a quick
Sure.
question. So you were talking about performance and the possibility of caching that data. And earlier you also mentioned the idea of utilizing HMR. So I was curious if you were doing anything formal in regards to state management.
For state management, we're currently using ngRx.
This
And
is Rocky's favorite topic.
I'm not looking to get into that debate. I was just curious, only because if you're going to be doing hot module replacement, HMR, you need to be able to store that state off. And if you have it all in one place, then that helps enable preserving that state in between application loads.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, yeah, I think we use ngRx quite a bit on MBA.com currently, and I think that's been one of the larger success stories for us. Being able to have one kind of smart component that subscribes to the data store at the top, and then a lot of dumb components so that data gets filtered down through via the store, and that reactive programming paradigm has been pretty critical in a lot of these applications that we've built, especially our game detail pages with this, 4 different videos that you can have playing. Yeah, for the hot module reloading, this takes a little minute to start up, but I had to do a lot of tweaking to get hot module reloading to work in a way that really works well with the serverless rendering. It's the SSR kind of runs on one port, and then the stuff for hot module reloading runs on another port, and I wanted the two to kind of get married together. And I figured out a way to combine the two. It's very hacky, and I don't want to, tell anyone to use that, but I'm basic auth in another area. But yeah, essentially we got something working that I'm pretty happy with.
Don't be concerned about having hacks. In my opinion, the idea of best practices is just a widely accepted hack.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of is. And the basic auth for our login is not test. It is when we're testing locally. But yeah, so let's see if this fires up here. It would be cool if it did. I swear, this is crazy. It's like the demo gods know. They just know.
Yeah, well, 35% of the time it works all the time.
I warned you before we started.
I said live coding. Live coding. It's different. It's different. It's so weird that it isn't working though. Anyways, I can go on port 4200, and this is where all the hot module reloading is going on and all that. But yeah, it's I think I've really enjoyed the hot module reloading because it's so freaking easy.
So the idea with that then is that with that HMR, then as you're working on the app in your browser and changing state, maybe you're clicking on something, adding something to a cart, and then you make changes in your code and the app reloads and it reloads your browser, that same state comes back to you, right?
Yep. So we'll just do it on 4200. We will skip the server side rendering because
I think one thing to note on the HMR stuff is that like you don't have to use like a state management system as long as you like have state somewhere, right? One of the big things that I like to do is try to build my URL in a fashion that like it is stateful. That way, like people can copy and paste it and things like that. And so even doing simple things like that, you can take advantage of, that is essentially state management. You're just putting it, serializing it into your URL. So, I mean, HMR will still work with that type of stuff.
Yeah. ngRx, it just gives you some helpful things, like even the time travel and things like that. It's all been kind of cool to work with. But yeah, you know, the hot module reloading, it's nothing crazy. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. But error timed out. Update on reload. For some reason, the service worker is caching. It thinks it's in service worker mode. Okay. Let's go back over here. New incognito. Try to cache all that out. 200. Yeah, it is not happy. The service worker is colliding with it, even though it says they're none registered and everything is updated on a reload. Just trust me that the hot module reloading, it's pretty sweet. We'll skip this for now. So story
detour.
Yeah, no. You're good. You're good. So we also have Storybook integrated. Storybook is a atomic design library. Oh, it's so angry. It should be failure.
I love Storybook so much.
No.
So much.
Let's see. Storybook. We don't have anything interesting set up yet in it, although we don't have it set up in this app. I will show you what we have set up on ngAir.com, which I probably shouldn't, but I feel bad how that's hot module reloading went. It was not great. So we'll go ahead and move over here. But yeah, right after my laptop is done freezing. So this is the local version of Storybook that we've integrated. Right now it's just, you know, the very default stuff, but it comes from the idea of atomic design. So atomic design is you create the smallest possible atoms of design for your application. So an example of that is, let's say for us, we're wanting to reuse an image across the site. That could be an atom, like a player image or a team image or something like that. We would use that as an atom. From there, we would go ahead and start doing, let's say, some text that goes underneath the atom. We'd go ahead and create another atom maybe for that text. The combination of those two atoms would then become a molecule. The combination of multiple molecules would then become a organism. Organisms become templates. Templates become pages. If you architect your site in a way that really uses this paradigm, imagine having like a couple hundred atoms or something like that, and your whole site was architected that way. You can quickly go ahead and prototype something else out that you didn't even think you could create before, but since you have all of those atomic elements to work with, you can do it so quickly. Of course, all ngAir.com services are not responding at the moment, so that's tons of fun. So I could show you some of our other atoms that we've created out there. Oh, so this is the production one. But it doesn't have quite as much, but like I said, some of our atoms are this, let me blow it up some. Some of our atoms are like this: headshots, team image, links. We have our typography. Then we go up to molecules. This seems like a little complicated molecule to me, but that's all right. A little complicated, but that's okay. And then our organisms. And we're slowly breaking everything down that we have and are turning it into these kind of more atomic pieces of the site to reuse. This obviously will be broken down more, but there are a lot of supporting atoms here for the team images and some of the text and everything.
So then, in an Angular world, would we be thinking these atoms would be like components, or maybe directives, or?
I guess it depends, right? So for most of this stuff, I would say they're probably components. Integration decided to load now, and this has quite a bit more stuff in it. But I think, if you want to do directive as an atom, that's totally fine too. I don't think there are any hard and fast rules with this. We've gotten in a lot of theoretical conversations with design about a button that had text, but then they wanted to add an icon to it. To them, a button is an atom, and it can only be that button, and that's it. But then let's say you want to add this icon to it, and we defined it as an atom. Well, how does that work? Is the button that everyone says should always be an atom no longer an atom? Or is that really just a property of the atom? And then how do we reuse that icon that goes along that button? What do we want to call that? But I mean, just having it as a property or whatever, it doesn't really matter the philosophical question too much. It's what works for you and your team. Can we just spend less cycles on it and say this is an atom, and the icon is just an electron on the atom? Like who cares, right? And it also goes back to a lot of this typography and stuff. I forget exactly what they call this. It was right before an atom. It's blanking on the name right now, but a lot of those paragraphs, a lot like them, stick to it as much as you can, but use what works for you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense.
So that's Storybook. It looks like we're coming up at about 7 minutes left. I've got a lot more material, but maybe we can try one more thing to see if the demo gods like me run. So we've been doing chaos testing. In chaos testing, I have a lot of fun with this because I don't have to fix any of it. I make the dev team fix it, and I just go in there and find new things to do. But at a high level, chaos testing is quite a bit. Netflix, the Chaos Monkey that I'm using will put a 500 on certain URLs in the app. It will also cause a uncaught exception to be thrown in the app, which will crash it. And then it will also just do a process exit. And I'm working on the memory and CPU pranks for this. But essentially, the developers would have this running in int or QA. And then as the app deteriorates, they would need to fix it over time and make it resilient to these issues. So what we're looking to do is test that out real quick and see some of these pranks fire off. And we'll go ahead and give it a look.
Oh, that's crazy. So is it then kind of the end-to-end test scenario? It's going to spin the app up and then do this chaos on the running app in a browser?
Yeah, it'll do the chaos, and you can see the process exiting and the 500 errors SYN and all that now. So, but since it's running as a PWA, you get kind of encapsulated away from some of it, and then we also have a script that runs that will restart the app just in case anything happens. But yeah, so
does that say prank 500 error?
Yeah. Let me. They have pranks and sins. So route 500 error SYN. So it starts up a 500 error on all of these routes. The reason why I particularly kind of like this one is because it's on the health check route for the container. If that starts 500ing for too long, AWS will shoot it in the head. You can see here that it just did a prank uncaught exception. So it just threw an uncaught exception, but I wrote it init.sh script that will actually wait for the process to crash. And if it does crash, it will wait 1 second and then reopen it. Then it reopens the zoo after it crashes, and it randomly picks either the uncaught exception or the process exit with each run.
Wow, that's crazy. So are the developers, is it hard to debug this when this happens for them to go in there and figure it out?
Yeah, it's so weird. It's awesome. Like I want to start doing things where I even start like deleting the containers and just being like, okay, guys, like how do you get the site to continue running? Things like that. So right now you can see SYN uncaught exception being thrown. It just crashed. Then it should start firing up the 500 errors on League Pass. And then you can see HTTP error 500 here. So we'll get that for another, it just answered the 500. So we'll get that for a little bit longer. But if I go back into here and I uncheck this, you should get some resiliency back, right? But yeah.
That's wild. That's cool. You can see how it could be totally helpful. For sure.
Yeah. Well, interesting for me, but
I guess. A challenge.
yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so probably should wrap it up. Oh, this is really interesting. A lot of stuff. That was crazy when you're listing out all those goals in the very beginning. I'm like, wow, that is a lot of goals to hit. But yeah, it looks like you're all working through it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, trying to get there. Oh,
cool. All right. Well, let's get into some picks, and then we'll call it a show. So let's see if our panelists got any picks. Austin,
I have one.
All right, Austin, go for it.
So the Microsoft Edge browser in preview, the new version is in preview. It uses the Chromium engine, which means if you actually download it and open it up and like open a couple things, like it even shows like Chrome in the sub processes. Just super awesome. I don't know who this company is anymore, but I never thought that my pick would be Microsoft Edge, Internet Explorer, whatever you call it today. That's crazy. And it's also coming to Mac. All right, gotta go.
We get it on Mac, Linux. But... All right. And that's your pick? That's your only pick?
Oh, I've got another one, actually. So you were talking about Storybook. Storybook has a new version coming out that has documentation in it. So I don't remember what it's like some flavor of Markdown that renders like HTML, like actually renders HTML and like JSX and other things like that. It is insanity. I just saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
All right, cool.
And then last one, StackBlitz. They made a big announcement. These guys are just out of control. Heart goes out to Eric and team. They can now, like they made an announcement at Google Next, I think, how they have integration with Google's like cloud functions and things like that. So you can literally create a project end to end, including GitHub repos and everything with one click in StackBlitz. That's it.
All right. That's a good pick too. All right.
I had this wonderful pick about Edge coming to Mac OS coming soon, but I think you may have already heard about that a few minutes ago. But I do have another pick. Jonathan Carter, who works on the VS Code team, specifically related to LiveShare, had done something really cool with Pomodoro and then sharing time across the session with other people. But the cool thing is that he detailed a little bit further saying that it actually synchronizes Redux state across VS Code live sessions. So if you're doing something for a VS Code live share as an extension onto that, you can utilize that and it'll synchronize those values across all the people connected to that live share. So pretty cool. I'll share a link to that as well.
Nice, nice. Nice pick recovery there. I like that.
Thanks.
All right, Brian, do you have any picks?
Sure. I didn't demo it today, but CompoDoc has actually been a really great thing that I've been working with, especially if you're using everything in types that you need to be using. So getting that kind of auto-generated documentation with Angular has been really, really great, getting the rest of the team spun up.
Nice. Yeah, we had an episode long time ago about that. We need to have an updated episode with the latest fix. I'm sure there's a lot of additional stuff. Awesome. All right, Brian, thanks a ton for coming on the show, sharing your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
For sure, for sure. All right, that's a wrap. Catch everyone next time. See ya.